What if I told you that behind the optimistic headlines, the latest US-Iran talks may have actually brought us closer to military strikes, not peace? Because despite public statements suggesting progress, what's happening behind the scenes tells a very different story. Today, we are breaking down what really happened in the negotiations, why both sides are spinning the narrative. Let's get into it. Publicly, Iranian officials are portraying the recent meeting as constructive, even positive. But from what we understand, the actual discussions were far less productive than Tehran is suggesting. There was very little forward movement. Instead of narrowing differences, the US reportedly issued more detailed and more demanding conditions. Washington's position? Iran would need to fully decommission its nuclear facilities. Not pause. Not temporarily limit. Not freeze. But dismantle. On the other side, Tehran's counteroffer appears unchanged, a short-term commitment to halt enrichment, but only through a potential Trump presidency and only in exchange for upfront sanctions relief. From the US perspective, that's a non-starter. A temporary pause doesn't permanently address the nuclear issue, and granting sanctions relief upfront removes leverage. So while the optics may look like diplomacy is alive, substantively, the gap between the two sides remains wide. So why is Iran describing the talks as positive? That part actually makes strategic sense. Tehran benefits from keeping negotiations alive. As long as talks continue, the likelihood of immediate military action decreases. By presenting the talks as substantive, Iran signals willingness to engage, which makes it harder for Washington to justify strikes in the short term. It's not unusual in high-stakes diplomacy for public messaging to differ dramatically from private reality. The real question isn't how the talks are described, it's whether either side is actually moving. Right now, there's little evidence they are. For a breakthrough to occur, there would likely need to be a fundamental shift in US political calculations. Specifically, Trump would have to be willing to accept a deal focused narrowly on Iran's nuclear program, without broader concessions on regional behavior, missile programs, or proxy forces. That seems unlikely based on past positions. If Washington's demands remain maximalist, full dismantlement, and Iran's position remains temporary and conditional, then we're not looking at a near-term diplomatic breakthrough. We are looking at a stalemate. And in geopolitics and generally in history, prolonged stalemates under military buildup rarely stay stable forever. Iran is also expected to deliver a detailed formal response to US demands within roughly the same timeframe. So you have diplomacy and military positioning happening in parallel. But they also create a deadline dynamic. Once assets are in place, the cost of inaction, politically and strategically, can rise. Current assessment? Strikes remain the base case if talks fail to produce measurable progress. Not immediate. Before Israeli strikes last year, it also appeared, publicly, that Washington and Tehran were close to establishing a framework to continue talks. Then events escalated rapidly. Diplomatic momentum can disappear overnight if either side concludes that negotiations are simply buying time for the other. Unless there has been a material shift, either in what Iran is willing to give up or what Washington is willing to accept, the structural barriers to a deal remain intact. Right now, there's no clear sign of that shift. What happens next? So here's what to watch. Iran's formal written response, expected within 2 weeks. Whether US rhetoric softens or hardens after reviewing Iran's reply. If the response narrows the gap, we could see an extended negotiation phase. If it doesn't, the probability of limited US or joint US-Israeli strikes increases significantly. This is one of those moments where diplomacy and military deterrence are moving side by side, and the next few weeks could be decisive. To summarize, publicly, optimism. Privately, deadlock. Militarily, escalation positioning. Politically, very little room for compromise. The headlines may suggest progress, but beneath the surface, the risk environment appears to be intensifying, not stabilizing. We'll continue monitoring developments closely. If you found this breakdown useful, make sure to like the video, subscribe for in-depth geopolitical analysis, and turn on notifications, because the next update could come quickly. Let me know in the comments. Do you think diplomacy still has a chance here, or are we heading toward confrontation? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.